They say nothing follows you into the dark, but he swore the footsteps weren't his own. Each echo down the concrete hallway grew sharper, closer, though he knew the jail was empty, locked down for the night. The lights overhead buzzed, flickering, just long enough for shadows to crawl where no one should be standing. His breath caught as the cold air pressed against his neck, like someone whispering without sound. And then, just beyond the bars, something moved. He should have looked away, but he didn't. That's when he realized, what he was seeing wasn't alive. The prison had a way of swallowing sound. Even in the daytime, when voices echoed through the corridors and the heavy clank of cell doors carried from one wing to the next, there was always a silence beneath it all, a silence too deep, too watchful, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Daniel, a correctional officer barely 3 months into the job, told himself it was just nerves. Everyone said the first year was the hardest, long nights, hostile inmates, endless paperwork, and that constant weight pressing down on you the moment you stepped inside the gates. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that this place was different. By daylight, the penitentiary looked tired, its bricks crumbling under decades of storms and neglect. At night, under buzzing fluorescent lights, it was something else entirely. The paint peeled in strips that curled like dead skin. The air smelled faintly of rust and mildew, carrying whispers of rot from the abandoned East Wing. Few officers ever volunteered to patrol that side of the building, and when Daniel asked why, the older guards brushed him off with jokes that didn't sound like jokes at all. He'd tell himself he was imagining things. That the shadows pooling in the corners were just tricks of the weak lights. That the way his radio sometimes hissed with static, even when he was alone in a sealed hallway, was nothing but faulty wiring. But as the weeks dragged on, the silences grew heavier. His footsteps rang too loud, echoing back at him as though the prison didn't want him there. One night, during a shift he'd pulled reluctantly, Daniel paused by a barred window overlooking the courtyard. The moonlight stretched across cracked concrete and razor wire, but the longer he stared, the more wrong it looked, like the shadows weren't following the rules of the light. He blinked hard, shook his head, and walked away before the unease could root itself deeper. The prison was his job, his paycheck, his routine. He told himself that as long as he kept his head down and did what he was told, the unease would fade. But deep down, he knew better. There was something inside these walls that didn't sleep, something that didn't want to be ignored. And whether he admitted it or not, it had already noticed him. At first, it was subtle. Daniel's patrols blurred into routine, keys jangling against his belt, the scuff of boots on concrete, the stale air clinging to his clothes. But little by little, the silence seemed to turn on him. Instead of calming, it became charged, as if every step stirred something lurking just beyond the reach of light. One evening, as he passed the East Wing stairwell, a section sealed for years, his radio crackled. Not with voices. With breathing. Ragged, wet, deliberate. He froze, holding the device against his chest. The sound stopped the moment he noticed it, leaving only the faint hum of static. His shift partner, posted 2 floors above, swore later he hadn't touched his radio at all. Daniel laughed it off, but the unease stuck with him like a shadow. The days that followed bled into each other, but the prison seemed to change when he was alone. Doors groaned in corridors no one walked. Lights flickered in patterns too deliberate to be chance. The stench of mildew grew sharper in certain corners, mixed with something else, something coppery, as if the air had been tainted by old wounds. During one night shift, Daniel caught movement at the end of the C-block hallway. A figure, just for a second, standing still under the dim fluorescent bulb. Too far to see clearly, but unmistakably there. He raised his flashlight, the beam cutting across peeling paint and barred cells. The hallway was empty. And yet, when he lowered the light, his skin prickled. The smell of iron filled the air, and he swore he heard faint chains dragging against the floor, retreating into the dark. The older guards didn't help. Some avoided eye contact when he mentioned odd noises or shadows. Others laughed, but their chuckles were tight, uneasy. One man, Morales, muttered a single warning over his coffee: "Don't answer if they call your name." He never explained what he meant. That night, Daniel dreamed of the prison's corridors. Endless hallways twisting into each other, doors slamming shut behind him, no matter which way he turned. When he woke, drenched in sweat, the clock read 3:07 a.m., the exact moment his cell block lights had cut out the week before. A week later, the unease became impossible to ignore. Daniel was assigned a solo sweep of the East Wing's ground floor, a part of the prison locked off since before his employment. Officially, it was due to mold, broken wiring, and unsafe structure. But the rumors said otherwise. That men had died there in ways the prison never explained. That one inmate's body was never recovered at all. The air was colder as soon as he stepped through the barred door, keys rattling in his trembling hand. His flashlight beam quivered across graffiti-scrawled walls. The smell hit him hardest, damp, metallic, tinged with rot. Every breath clung heavy in his lungs. He told himself to just finish the sweep and leave. But the further he walked, the more it felt like he wasn't moving deeper into the wing was moving deeper into him. A scraping sound echoed behind him. He spun, light darting over rusted doors and cracked tiles. Empty. But the sound persisted, faint but steady, like nails dragging across stone. His radio hissed. And then, clear as if whispered inches from his ear, his own name. Daniel. He stumbled backward, fumbling with the volume, but the static only grew sharper. The voice came again, distorted, layered, as though several throats were speaking in unison. Daniel. He dropped the radio. The plastic clattered against the floor, cutting the sound. His breath thundered in the silence. And then came the laugh. Low. Hollow. Rising from the dark corridor ahead. From that night on, Daniel wasn't the same. He forced himself through shifts, but sleep slipped away, stolen by noises that carried through the vents in his apartment, sounds he shouldn't have been able to hear outside prison walls. He swore the odor of rust followed him home, clinging to his clothes, soaked into his skin. Back inside, paranoia became constant. He'd feel eyes on him through narrow cell door slots, only to find every inmate asleep. He'd turn corners expecting to see another guard, only to find the halls abandoned. The prison wanted him to know he wasn't alone. One evening, while logging rounds, Daniel noticed something strange. One of the cell doors in the sealed East Wing was ajar. Not wide, just enough to reveal blackness inside. He shouldn't have even been able to get close, the locks were welded shut years ago. Yet there it was, waiting. He approached, flashlight trembling in his grip. The beam slipped through the gap, catching something inside. Scratched words carved deep into the wall. His chest tightened as the letters came into focus. Don't answer them. The same warning Morales had muttered. And then, before he could move, the door slammed shut with a force that rattled the entire block. His flashlight died instantly, plunging him into suffocating darkness. Daniel stumbled back, heart hammering, when he heard it again, the sound of breathing. Not from one person, but many. Surrounding him. Thick, rasping, filling the air until it pressed against his eardrums. He gasped, reaching for his radio, but it only emitted static. Somewhere in the pitch black, something whispered his name. Drawn out. Mocking. He bolted for the exit, boots slamming against tile, barely keeping his bearings. The breathing followed. Every step he took, it grew closer. Louder. He didn't stop until he burst through the metal door into the lit corridor, collapsing against the wall. When he finally dared to glance back, the East Wing door was sealed tight. No sound. No movement. Only the echo of his pulse in his ears. After that, he begged for reassignment. But the warden denied his request. East Wing's been empty for years, the man said, his tone flat, rehearsed. Whatever you think you saw, it wasn't real. Daniel wanted to believe him. Needed to. But deep inside, he knew the prison wasn't empty. The silence wasn't silence at all. It was waiting. And every night he walked those halls, it seemed to wait for him. Daniel told himself he would never set foot in the East Wing again. But the prison didn't care what he told himself. 3 weeks later, he was ordered to escort a contractor to check faulty wiring near the old block. The request was routine, though everyone knew the lights hadn't worked there in decades. His protest barely left his lips before the warden's stare shut it down. Orders were orders. The contractor, a wiry man who smelled of cigarettes and grease, hummed tunelessly as he unpacked his tools. Daniel followed in silence, his keys rattling like nervous bones at his side. The instant they crossed the threshold into the East Wing, Daniel felt the shift. The air thickened. The silence pressed in, just as it had before. Only this time, it felt alive, like the entire building leaned forward to listen. The contractor muttered about rusted wires and damp stone, barely paying attention. But Daniel's focus snapped toward every shadow. The stink of mildew seemed stronger now, laced with the metallic tang of blood. When they reached the heart of the wing, the contractor crouched by an exposed junction box. Daniel stood guard, flashlight shaking as he swept the corridor. And then came the first sound. Not footsteps. Not chains. Something wet. A slow, deliberate dragging, as though something heavy was being pulled across the floor just beyond sight. "Do you hear that?" Daniel whispered. The contractor didn't look up. "Hear what?" The noise grew louder. Closer. Daniel aimed his light down the hallway. Empty. But the floor glistened faintly, a dark trail smeared across the cracked tiles. The smell hit him next, thick, choking, copper and rot. His throat tightened, his stomach lurching. Then the voice. Soft at first, like a breath against the ear. His name. Daniel, his flashlight beam snapped to the far end of the hall. A figure stood there. At least, it looked like one. Tall, thin, its outline flickering like static. No face, just a blur, shifting between shadow and substance. The contractor swore under his breath, tools clattering as he scrambled to his feet. "What the hell is that?" The figure lurched forward. Not walking. Not running. Just moving, as if the space between them bent to its will. The light above them flickered. The contractor bolted toward the exit, but the hallway seemed to stretch, the doorway receding as if swallowed by distance. His scream echoed, strangled, before it cut off completely. Daniel stood frozen. His legs refused to obey. The figure drew closer, and the air grew colder with every flicker of the light. When it was only yards away, Daniel finally staggered backward, fumbling for his radio. Static. Nothing else. The figure stopped. For a heartbeat, the silence was unbearable. Then, the cell doors around him slammed open all at once. Metal crashed, the sound ricocheting like thunder through the wing. From the darkness within, shapes began to spill out, dozens of them. Twisted outlines, bodies with heads bowed, faces blurred. They crawled, dragged, limped toward him, their breaths ragged and wet. Daniel's flashlight sputtered. For half a second, it caught their details. Skin is gray and flaking. Eye sockets are hollow, but watching. Hands bloodied and torn, reaching out. Every cell had given up its dead. Daniel ran. His boots slipped on the wet trail smeared across the floor, blood, or something older. The lights above him stuttered, plunging him in and out of total blackness. In those fragments of illumination, the shapes closed in from every side. He slammed into a wall, chest heaving. No exit. The corridor had twisted, reshaped itself. The East Wing didn't want him to leave. The whispers rose again. Not just his name now. Sentences. Phrases. Layered voices, broken and overlapping. You don't belong here. Stay with us. We never left. The words filled his skull, vibrating through his bones. He pressed his hands to his ears, but the voices only grew louder, leaking from the walls, the floor, the very air. He stumbled forward blindly, praying for a door, a stairwell, anything. The darkness swallowed him whole. And then, out of nowhere, a light. A cell door hung open, a faint glow spilling from within. Against every instinct, he staggered toward it. Inside, the glow revealed a single chair bolted to the floor. Restraints dangling, rusted and stained. And carved into the concrete wall, words gouged deep, answered once. Never left. The glow dimmed. He realized it wasn't light at all, but movement. Shapes pressed against the walls, as if trapped behind them, their faces stretching the stone. Their mouths opened, whispering in unison. Answer us, Daniel. The chair rattled, metal clanging as if unseen hands tugged at the restraints. The air tightened around his chest, squeezing the breath from his lungs. And then, the contractor screams. High, guttural, raw. Echoing from somewhere deeper in the wing. Then cut short. Daniel bolted from the cell, heart jackhammering. The corridor stretched endlessly, shadows writhing against the walls. The figures followed, crawling, dragging themselves closer. The static figure appeared again ahead of him. This time, its face had form, a distorted version of his own. It smiled. And the voices roared. Stay. 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 The floor split beneath him with a sound like tearing flesh. Darkness yawned open, swallowing light and air. He fell to his knees at the edge, the void below alive with writhing shapes, hands clawing upward. His flashlight slipped from his grasp, clattering into the dark, swallowed instantly. The static figure leaned closer, its face inches from his own. And in a voice that was both his and not his, it whispered, "You're already one of us." The floor gave way. Daniel's scream vanished into the dark. And when the silence returned, it was absolute. Only the east wing remained, quiet, sealed, patient. Waiting for the next name to answer. They found Daniel 2 days later. Or at least, they said they did. He was discovered slumped in the east wing corridor, his uniform soaked through with sweat, his face pale as chalk. His radio was dead, flashlight shattered at his feet. The contractor he'd been assigned to escort was never recovered, only his tools left behind, scattered in the dust. Daniel didn't speak when they pulled him out. He didn't fight, didn't resist. He just stared straight ahead, eyes wide, unblinking, as if watching something the others couldn't see. Doctors called it exhaustion. Trauma. A nervous collapse brought on by stress and lack of sleep. The warden signed the report quickly, too quickly, insisting the matter be closed. The east wing was sealed again, tighter than before. But nothing could seal what had taken root inside Daniel. Weeks passed. He was placed on leave, but the silence followed him home. His apartment, once ordinary, forgettable, turned alien. Shadows stretched too long in the corners. The hum of the refrigerator sounded like breathing. At night, the pipes carried whispers through the walls, low and patient, always saying his name. Neighbors complained of a smell leaking from his unit, metallic and sour, though inspections found nothing. Daniel stopped answering his door. Stopped answering his phone. And yet, those who glimpsed him through his window swore he was never truly alone. They said they saw figures moving behind him. Flickering shapes, blurred, watching. They said sometimes he sat for hours in the dark, motionless, as if chained to a chair no one else could see. When confronted, he only smiled faintly and whispered, "I told them no." But they don't stop asking. The prison carried on, swallowing more years, more men. The east wing remained abandoned, locked behind rusted bars and reinforced chains. But guards whispered that some nights, when the block was quietest, they heard the sound of cell doors slamming. They heard breathing where no one stood. And sometimes, only sometimes, radios hissed with a familiar voice. Flat. Broken. Calling from nowhere. Daniel. The official record insists Daniel never returned to the penitentiary after his breakdown. But stories ripple through the staff like underground water. Some claim they've seen him during rounds, uniform pressed, keys rattling against his belt, walking the halls as if nothing ever happened. When they call out, he doesn't answer. He only keeps walking, turning corners that lead to nowhere. Others whisper his face appears in the east wing windows on moonlit nights. Watching. Waiting. And though the warden dismisses the rumors, every man who's heard Daniel's voice through static knows the truth. The prison doesn't let go. It never did.